content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families. The wind is howling across the Hudson River, its icy fingers clawing at the dark water. A single kayak bobbed in the distance, empty, adrift. Somewhere beneath the surface, the current carried a terrible secret. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident. A man lost to the river's unforgiving depths, his fiancée devastated by grief, but something wasn't right. The sorrow didn't seem real. The story didn't quite add up. And when she started doing cartwheels on social media just days after his disappearance, then came the confession. I wanted him dead. Tonight, we're going beyond the headlines and into the shadows of a case where love lies and deep, dark waters collide. It's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I am your host, Winnie Schrader. And tonight, it's still the month of love. It's February. And, you expect to go on a romantic kayaking trip, depending on where you are. But this case happened to be on the Hudson River. And it was a perfect afternoon for an engaged couple to have a lovely afternoon kayaking and just enjoying the outdoors. But when Angelika and Vincent were kayaking, Vincent had an unfortunate accident and he drowned. Now, Diane Fanning wrote the book Death on the River, Fiancee's Dark Secrets and the Kayak Trip That Turned Deadly. And she's going to come on and help us figure out this case because this one, it's very convoluted. It's kind of one of those, did she really intend to do it? Was it an accident? And that's why I wanted to have her on because this case is kind of, it's very muddy when it comes to uh, guilty or not guilty. And Diane Fanning, she has written so many books. You've probably seen her on many true crime documentaries. She's been on ABC, HLN, and all those kind of shows. So welcome to the show, Diane.
Thank you, Winnie. Good to be here with you today.
Okay, so Death on the River. As I was looking through this book, I'm like, how how did they come to think that she was possibly guilty of causing the death and not looking at it as just an accident? So maybe take us back to the beginning of the story where Angelika and Vincent meet and how things grew to the point where one of them passed away on a vacation.
Angelika brought a long history of unsatisfactory relationships with other men to uh, her relationship with Vinny. Vinny,
Okay.
too, had had one marriage that ended up in divorce. Uh, I mean, mainly because of his financial irresponsibility.
Okay.
But they were coming together with kind of the odds against them being able to make it work. But it seemed like they were in love.
Okay.
And Vinny's main problem with money was that he wanted to help people. He was the
Mhm.
kind of guy that would literally give you the shirt off his back. He
Yeah.
would pick up bar tabs. He would, if somebody had a problem and didn't have the money to repair a car, he would be there giving it to him. So it ended up, he made himself be financially difficult in large part from helping others and from being the life of the party.
Yeah.
Now, and Angelica was kind of, she had a different view of men. I think it seems from the start that her view of men was that they were supposed to take care of her and she really wasn't supposed to have to work. And
Oh.
maybe it's because she was from Lithuania, that was so, seemed to be so strong. But she came over to the United States as a nanny, and
Mhm.
she she met the guy who came to repair the furnace, and was off and running with him. And then when things didn't go as she thought they should, she ended up going and living in a park in a tent with this other guy, and that didn't work out real well either.
Well,
And and
living in a
she
tent.
she married probably a really stable guy who actually had a regular job and a business of his own. And at that time she was working at the Franklin Delano Roosevelt Library, digitalizing the content in the library. And
Okay.
in her spare time, that took her away from home. So in her spare time in the evenings, she was all alone, and she started hanging out at all the live music venues in the area. And there's quite a bit of them up around Poughkeepsie.
Okay.
And but she apparently got tired of this other guy she was married to, and one day when she knew he was out of town, she went, got all of her stuff out of his house, and a lot of his stuff too, including toilet paper, and loaded up her car and came to live in with this guy who hadn't invited her to live with him, and was very surprised when she showed up at his door. But anyway, she did that. So she was kind of cavalier with men. But with
Yeah.
Vinny, it seemed like she was ready to be serious.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
her
Like
idea,
it's almost
yeah,
yes. It's like she almost like knew like, okay, this is the one that's gonna help me get through life. It's like, yeah. So it's like all the other ones. She's like, oh, this one's not gonna work out. She's just trying to find
yeah.
that perfect man.
And Vinny was, because of his generous nature,
Uh huh.
he was really open to it. And she was a petite young woman. She was very bubbly. She was
Hmm.
really into working with rescued animals, and she spent time volunteering at rescue sites. Uh, so she was, outwardly, she had a lot of heart,
Hmm.
and but she really didn't like working, and she kept losing one job after another for things that she did. And some of it was just, instead of waiting tables, she'd get up and start singing with the band. And that was okay in slow times, but they she didn't keep it in slow times completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, and she really didn't think she should have to work. And the big bone of contention that came up is she wanted to have a wedding in Lithuania and a party on the Hudson River. And Vince was saying, I can't afford all of this, particularly
Yeah.
if you're not working.
Right.
So, yeah, so that was a bone of contention. So it was like things were not rosy in the household at the time.
Okay. Gotcha. Well, yeah, and I mean, it's like she was just clueless. Like you don't just use people like that. You don't toss a people away like that. You don't just.
throw this onto people and be like, well, I want this and I want that, and not do anything to contribute. Yeah, her her perception of uh not knowing your place, but when you're a partner with somebody, it's got to be a 50-50 thing. It can't be just
Yeah, yeah.
100% one way. And maybe it is like that in Lithuania. I have no clue. So now things
But
were a bit rocky.
the
Oh, go
thing
ahead.
of it was, is she was so unrealistic. I mean, she didn't take into account poor Vinny. He lost a marriage over financial trouble. He'd been
Uh-huh.
bankrupted, and now she wants him to take on all this other expense.
Right.
It was rather self-absorbed.
Yeah, very selfish sounding. Yeah, just that gross, superficial people just drive me insane.
Yeah.
But so like things are a bit rocky now with them because of the whole financial situation. What was kind of the status of the relationship leading up to the incident on the Hudson River when they went kayaking?
Vinny had given her an ultimatum. He
Okay.
said, "You have to get a job, or we're going to have to put off the wedding."
Okay.
To Angelica, the idea of putting off the wedding was the same as not calling off the wedding. It wasn't just a
Yeah.
scheduling thing with her. She thought
Yeah.
it was terminal.
Okay.
And she did not want to go to work.
Well, can't always get what you want.
No, you can.
So okay. So yeah, so she's just like, oh God. I'm sure her temperament at this point is just outrageous and just being like a spoiled brat, I'm sure. I can just sense it with her. But okay, so that things he gave her an ultimatum. So that obviously probably threw her more over the edge of not wanting to work, and thinking this guy is cheating her out of a life that she wants. Apparently she wants a champagne life on a beer budget. But so
On somebody
when
else's beer budget. Yeah.
right, right. Somebody else's beer budget. Um, so, and it does seem like this is she's very it seems like her motive is very financially driven. So that's kind of helping me figure things out with this case. So, now, with her being, uh, temperamental and him giving an ultimatum, what made them want to go on this trip together? It seems like, wanting to save money and things. Why go on a kayaking trip?
Well, the kayaking trip didn't really cost anything. They already had the
Okay.
kayaks.
Oh,
And
okay.
there
So it wasn't
and,
like a
there was no
venture out.
charge to get on the river. And,
Okay.
I think they were trying both of them were trying to, put some of the carefree back in their relationship because things had gotten tense. And I think they
Okay.
were both working on making it all work out and get back to where they once belonged together. And, at least I see that as Vinny's, idea of why
Mhm.
they were going on this trip. It's not quite so clear with Angelica.
Mhm.
Um, she, for some reason, before they left, she'd removed the plug from his kayak, and she also got removed the clips that hold the oars in place.
Oh.
And why she did this is not certain,
Mhm.
but she wasn't really. Yes, this is where it comes really hard because
Mhm.
it looks like it would have to be an accident or else it would have to be premeditated murder, but I don't think it was either.
Okay. And okay, so she removed the plug. What was her reasoning for removing that stuff from the kayak?
She didn't have a reason. I think the only thing she said was something that the cat liked to play with it. I mean, If the cat liked to play with it, that's fine. You put it back before you use the kayak again.
Well, right.
You know?
If it's on the kayak, how's the cat getting it? It's clipped onto the kayak. If the cat wants to bat it, at least it's not going anywhere. I mean, taking it off. That doesn't
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah, I don't know where they stored the kayaks. I mean, they had an apartment, so their options were probably limited about where they could go. And I doubt if it was in the apartment, they probably had a storage area. But
Okay.
yeah, so they loaded them up and they stopped in town to grab a bite to eat and then headed out to the river.
Okay. So, they get out to the river, they get on the river. So, how long were they? I mean, was it obviously if the plug wasn't in his kayak, which that to me, if you're an avid outdoorsman and a sportsman doing kayak, hiking, all that, the one thing you always, always do is always pre-check your equipment. Always pre-check
Yes,
your
you would
equipment.
think that, but
Hmm.
Vinny did not have a life jacket.
Oh no.
She
Why?
did, but there was only one. It was Vinny's life jacket, but there was only one. Apparently, Angelica did not have one or did not bring it, but there was one, and Vinny said, "You should have that." And he had some sort of flotation device in his kayak, but it wasn't all that great. And
Oh, okay.
the weather that day was beautiful. The sun was shining. The river was one. Now, the Hudson River is unusual in that it's a tidal river.
Okay.
So that means that, it ebbs and flows like the ocean.
Yep.
And where they were going, there's a place where it's really wide, but then right down from it, it narrows suddenly. So
Okay.
everything moves really fast.
Okay.
And it was very early in the year to be
Hmm.
kayaking. The an experienced kayaker, if they were going on the river at that time of year, would have probably worn a wetsuit. Neither one of them did,
Okay.
because it does not take long
Yeah.
to get into trouble in when water is that cold. It was
Oh,
mid-April, so the day was pretty. The day was kind of warmish, but once you
okay.
get on the water, things do change a lot.
Okay.
But the first part of their trip was just great. They
Mhm.
got in their kayaks and they went across the water to Bannerman Island. Bannerman Island is a sight to see. It
Hmm.
looks like a ruin, and part of it is ruins, and they're trying to stabilize it and keep it. But this man who had collected all this, Bannerman was his name. He'd collected all this World War One and Two weaponry from the war, and he had a warehouse in New York City, but he had
Okay.
like three 30 million uh, shells that he couldn't store in the city. So he brought them out to this island and he built an armory to hold them.
Oh, cool.
So it was this huge armory, which now like walls have fallen in and stuff. But there's a garden there because he also built a residence.
Oh,
And so
okay.
there are people that are just in love with this island and are trying to restore it and maintain uh, the ruins so that they don't deteriorate anymore. And they do gardening there, and there's just beautiful gardens there. And
Okay.
so that's where they went out to. And the thing of it is this was a place where Angelica volunteered her time. She helped out with the gardening there.
Okay.
And but nobody is supposed to go there unaccompanied. So she contacted the volunteer manager, but
Okay.
did not wait long enough to get a response and just went out there because, well, she had a sense of ownership of the place because she put so many hours in. So they
Right.
went out there, and she had brought along some bathing suits and stuff to do some modeling. And Vinny was taking pictures of her traipsing around on the island. And then suddenly, this storm came up. And storms can get real rough up there. I mean, one of
Mhm.
the mountains is called Storm King Mountain. So what does that tell you? There's
Yeah.
problem.
Yep. It's
So yeah, so they got ready to go back, and the water was insane. It was churning. It was nuts. And at first, Vinny's on that water and he's having a blast. This is like a kid on his first little mini race car going around the track. He was having a
yeah.
blast. But he did not realize how totally dangerous it was.
Okay. Okay. So now where is she at? Is she in a kayak too at this
They
point?
they both have
Okay.
kayaks. She has a red one,
Okay.
he has a blue one. Yes.
Okay, so they're back in the water. They're done off on the island taking the pictures. So
Mhm.
are they trying to like get ahead of the storm so they can get back, or are they obviously?
They're in the middle of it. They're
Okay,
right in the middle of it. And they are trying to get across as quick as they can because it's not
okay,
a good place to be. What
okay.
was
So
a fairly placid river when they went across was now a disaster.
okay, so they're trying to make their way back to where they need to get off and get out of their kayaks and stuff. So what happened to Vincent's kayak that caused him to start going down?
His kayak flipped from one of the waves,
Okay,
and when it flipped, he fell out of the kayak, and
okay,
he was holding on to it. But the water temperature was so cold that his limbs started getting numb, and he
hmm
started having trouble breathing. That cold water presses on your chest, makes it hard to get a breath. It's a hypothermia situation,
hmm
and he's struggling. And Angelika pushes his paddle away so he can't grab it. And she just sits in her kayak and watches for 20 minutes. She does not pick up her cell phone and call for help for 20 minutes.
What? Wow.
Yes. And
Oh,
then when she calls and she looks over to where she knows the boat will be coming from to rescue, when she sees it on its way, she overturns her kayak and puts herself in the water so that she
mm,
looks like she's a
she
victim of an accident too.
yeah, she's in distress. Oh my, how can you sit there and watch somebody die like that?
I'm
Oh,
sorry, if it's somebody I profess to love, I wouldn't
right,
profess to love somebody without true feelings. And I would risk my own life to offer
right,
assistance. If
right.
I died in the process, so be it. But I'm not going to just sit there and watch and not make a phone call
Right.
either.
I mean, like, how can you sit there and say yeah, love this person, and you would not want any harm to come to them, and they're struggling to survive, and you literally take control of the situation and move everything out of the way that could possibly save them, including
Yep.
yourself. That's
Yep.
horrible, horrible. So
Exactly.
20 minutes. So 20 minutes, then what? Did she finally call somebody? I mean, like,
Yeah, she called up to the rescue station. They sent somebody, but by then it was too late for poor Vinny. Um,
yeah.
there were so many people in the community, but Vinny was everybody's friend. everybody adored him. He was charming. He was, like I said, generous. And he was the life of the party. And people knew they could count on him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if it was a senseless accident, this would be a horrible tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there was more to it than an accident.
Okay. Well, we do have to take a quick break. So when we come back, we're going to kind of examine how up front everyone thought it was an accident and what made it unravel to make it possibly be murder, manslaughter. Okay, we have Diane Fanning. She is the author of Death on the River, a fiance's dark secrets, and a kayak trip turned deadly. And we're going to talk about where this case unraveled and how it came to court and possibly a conviction of murder. Attention, all you true crime lovers, the wait is over. Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot merch is officially here. If you love murder, mystery, and a good glass of wine, now you can wear your obsession with our exclusive collections of tees, hoodies, and more. From Talk Crimey to Me to I'm Only Here for the Alibi, we've got the perfect designs to sip and sleuth in style. Now, I'm only getting started. So what are you waiting for? Head over to mysteriesmayhemandmerlot.net and click the merch tab at the top of the page and get to sleuthing. Don't just get your fix by listening to true crime. It's time to start wearing your obsession too. Okay, and we're back. We have Diane Fanning. She is the author of Death on the River, Fiance's Dark Secrets, and a Kayak Trip Turned Deadly. And before the break, we were kind of talking about, like, how did this case turn from an accident up front on the surface to possible murder? So, he drowned and died, with hypothermia and everything in the river. And then she was obviously rescued. So what happened once she was brought back and things, police investigation on the accident, what started unraveling there?
Well, she didn't act like she was too bothered by what had happened. She started selling his stuff right away. I mean, even to people who were actively searching the riverbanks to try to find his body. And she was at his mother's house, and she was in the backyard in a full view of the whole family through a big window, and she did cartwheels in the yard. Somehow, I know everybody grieves differently, but that does not seem like grief to me.
She related to Casey Anthony?
Yeah, you would think. Yes.
I mean, come on. It's that. What kind of behavior is that? I understand people do grieve differently, but that, no.
And then, when she was out on the island and the cops came out there and DeCorto was interviewing her, and she was pretty open with him. I mean, she said she was relieved that he was dead.
That is the stupid thing I've ever heard.
What?
Yes, relieved. And she, she started bad mouthing him about, he expected her to work, and and then she started talking about how he was trying to force her into a threesome with another woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to a woman who was a friend of Angelika's, and they had a conversation one time, and she said, I told her that all the men in this area of New York, all of them want to have threesomes with two women. Now, is that what gave her the idea that that was a good thing? I don't know. But she really did not act at all distressed. And she was very ambivalent about the fact that he was dead. And it just did not sound like it was possible. Then they discovered the kayak plug and the clips for the oars, and all of it started looking like this is a woman who may have engineered this.
Mm-hmm.
And they started investigating it and getting deeper in it. And then, of course, there was a lot of media involved. So an expert came on one of the big news shows showing how that the kayak would not fill with water with that plug missing. But they didn't bother to show how when the state police did that experiment, it did fill with water. I mean, you were talking about storm-like conditions out there, and they are going to be different
Yeah.
anyway from just a regular test.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of a mess, and raising its ugly head in the midst of all of this, of course, was the life insurance policy.
Oh, yes. Let's hear
And
it on the Sunday.
of course, she wanted the $100,000 life insurance.
Of course.
But who wouldn't? But yeah, she was just so cavalier about the whole thing, and it was like she was posting all these pictures. There was a goodbye to Vinny thing, and that the friends of Vinny put on, and she was there swanning around like she was the star of the show. It really bothered people that
Yeah.
saw it. And so her post Vinny's death behavior was troubling. But when you
Yeah.
look at what she did in advance, you look at her expressions of wishing he was dead, and you put it all together, and suddenly you get to a situation where it's very easy to believe that she had something to do with it. Now, if you look at premeditated murder, well,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's kind of difficult to prove because there was so much that was out of her control.
Right.
She did not know that the weather was going to turn the way it
Mm-hmm.
did. Maybe she suspected it, but she did not know. And I don't think if she knew that she would have been in that kayak like that. So
Right.
um, I don't think she had any intention of risking her life. I think that Angelika Graswald was an opportunist.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted him gone, but she wanted his money and his life insurance
Mm-hmm.
so she could go on and continue to live her life. So she saw an opportunity and she took it. She
Right.
didn't lend aid. She just watched him suffer and die.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she did that was such a painful, painful thing to Vinny's family. Can
Yeah.
you imagine being Vinny's mother and knowing that someone for 20 minutes watched as he died?
Yeah.
It's just, it tears your insides out just to think about it.
Right. And it's supposed to be somebody that's supposed to love him and care for him too. And
Yes,
it's
somebody that was going to marry him
right. And
and be part of
it's
the
like
family. Yeah.
yeah, because like when you have children and they grow up and they have relationships, you want nothing but the best for your child, regardless
Yes.
of their age, and to be so cavalier about it. And yeah, that's got to be just kind of soul crushing to see that, especially play it out in court. And yeah, she just sounds like yeah, she sounds like a treat. This, oh
Yeah.
man.
She did have a good attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, sometimes that's what it comes down to. Having an
Mm-hmm.
attorney that is willing to stretch the boundaries of reality to get you out of the mess you're in.
Right. Okay. So now she gets an attorney. This is brought to court. What were the actual charges that the DA brought up against her?
She was charged with second-degree murder at one point,
Okay.
but that was dropped to reckless homicide, I believe.
Okay. Gotcha. And yeah, I mean, I could see that one sticking, because whether or not obviously she didn't cause the storm, didn't cause the water to be so rough where his kayak flipped over.
But she
Um,
did take the plug out of the kayak.
Yep. And she just sat there and watched him and didn't
For
hate
20
him in
minutes.
any way. For
Yeah.
20 minutes, yeah. So, okay.
Yes.
So now, does she plead out or does it end up going to a trial?
It was a plea bargain. Yes.
Okay. And what was her plea bargain that she got?
Basically time served. There was a little more additional sentence, but a very small amount, couple months. And
Just a couple months?
yeah. I mean, she'd been locked up for a little while, and so
Okay.
time served and then a couple of months. It's
Yeah.
horrible.
So,
It is horrible. Vinny was a good person. Was he
yeah.
perfect? No. But he was a good person and he deserved to live much longer.
Right. And, it's like one of those things too. Does he have any type of responsibility as well? Not being prepared, not having life jackets, not checking the equipment before entering the water. So it's like, does some of the responsibility kind of fall on his shoulders at all? Just not being prepared
If it was
kayakers?
just an accident, if it had been an
Okay.
accident, yes, you would say he was careless. He was
Okay.
like playing like an adolescent. I am invincible.
Okay.
But it wasn't just an accident.
Yeah.
Some things happened sort of accidentally,
Yeah.
but he didn't go out there alone. He
Uh-huh.
had someone with him who should have been interested in his survival,
Yeah.
but she
For
was
sure.
not.
Ugh, God. And just to say, she's just like, I'm glad he's dead. Well, excuse me?
Yeah.
I mean, for $250,000 life insurance policy, can you at least pretend you're sad about it? For God's sakes. I mean, come on. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous that she
Yeah.
was publicly like that. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, Diane, for talking about this case. Because, yeah, on the surface, I was looking, I'm like, how could they have proved, what proof did they have to change this from an accident to a murder? And, shedding that light on that topic, this has cleared it up pretty good for me, because I was just like, it was one of those things where it's like, is she guilty? Is she not? Who has responsibility? But now that sounds like she literally watched a guy get stabbed in an alleyway with a suitcase full of money, and instead of helping the guy, she took the suitcase of money and walked away. So I mean, it's pretty much what she did.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, she is not a great human being. I'm just gonna put her on my shit list for that one.
Good idea. Good idea.
Well,
Well, another person that should be on that list is someone who I just finished a book about that's coming out next month.
who?
Lizzie Borden.
Yes, we are definitely gonna have to have you on for
And
that one.
it's here's my bookmark.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's fiction, not true crime. But what I did is basically using my experience of all the true crime I've written, I tried to put myself into Lizzie's head and find a way where what she did made some sense.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. And my husband just a few years ago, he did the Curse of Lizzie Borden episode. It was a shock doc that they did on Travel Channel. And, Lizzie Borden case, you got true crime, but then you got a lot of paranormal stuff tied to it as well. So I love the Lizzie Borden stuff, and I love how people are taking new ideas and aspects to tell the story, but to have a different look and an insight, I find that very interesting. I'm definitely going to have you on, because I do like to have some of these true crime elements as a more narrative and fictional way, because it helps the readers absorb the story better, I think, because they can relate to the story more. And so it's going to be interesting. I'll definitely have to have you on that.
My tagline is, you don't need to be a feminist to feel the rage.
Ooh, I love it. We're definitely going to have you on for that one, Diane. Well, thank you so much. And yes, you guys did see the ad, but make sure you check out my merch tab on mysteriesmayhemmerlot.net. Yep, I finally got my true crime merch, so go ahead, check it out, and happy shopping. And I will see you guys all next week.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.